While at Podfest, my special guest co-host Juliette Hahn and I jumped in with Stuart Goffman, co-founder of Pick Cherries.
Pick Cherries is a new podcasting app, just like Apple or Spotify, but what is different is that when you're listening to your favorite podcast, you can take a little special moment, which is called a Pick Cherry, and send that to your friends and family, just like you would an IG or a TikTok.
Stuart not only explained how he's disrupting podcast promotion, but he also shared a bit about his life, including how a life-changing stroke in his mid-30s gave him a new perspective, how a friend's death has driven him to help others who suffer from addiction, and what it's like to produce a reality TV show.
Take a listen and download Pick Cherries on iOS or Google Play, and then find your favorite moment in this episode and send it to your friends and family.
Follow the Jedburgh Podcast and Your Next Stop on all social media and all podcast platforms. Check out the full video versions of this episode and all our Podfest conversations on YouTube. If you're not picking cherries, are you really listening to podcasts? Stu, welcome to the Jedburgh Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're so excited to have you pick cherries here. We're here with Juliette Hahn from Your Next Stop. She has joined me on this adventure to come down here to Florida again, because we were here a couple weeks ago. We're set up. We're in the hallway of the conference center. You were kind enough to spend some time with us. We've been talking over the last couple of days about Pick Cherries, what it is. Juliette's already on the platform. I'm waiting to get on the platform.
You're going to be there really soon.
The next
especially now, right?
Yeah.
You know, I want to hear my voice on Pick Cherries.
Now we put the money in the bank, so
exactly.
Time's ready to cash it in. But I want to talk about Pick Cherries. I want to talk about Juliette's involvement in Pick Cherries. I want to talk about the idea behind it, the vision, where it is right now, and then get into your story and what motivated you to make the leap in the various initiatives that you've been in, whether it be mental health and overcoming adversity yourself. And we're going to lay it all out there and have a quick conversation about it.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Yeah, very excited.
And I'm really happy and grateful to be with you guys today, and and knowing you guys.
Right, meeting in person.
Oh, yeah,
which,
absolutely.
I mean, we've talked so many different times, on the phone with text messages, and now we get to, have a face to the name kind of thing.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, let's start off with Pick Cherries, the concept behind it, and the vision that you had to create this platform.
It's interesting. There is a quote or a tweet by Elon Musk saying...
He's got a few of them.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I know him.
Yeah, exactly. Good ideas always are crazy until they're not, right? So I used to listen to Joe Rogan podcast at the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning.
I've heard of him. Yeah. A couple of people listen to his podcast.
And I would listen and I'd be like, oh, this is something that I talked about with Fran. So I would text you at 5 o'clock in the morning and say, listen, download Joe Rogan, go to this episode, go to 1 hour, 30 minutes, and 30 seconds, and he was talking about rowing. And then I would call you later and said, hey, did you listen? And everybody was like, I'm not going to do that.
No. I mean, how many times have we done that? Shared our,
right.
You got to listen to this. It's such a great interview that is
no one ever does that.
Right.
So you want me to find the podcast, download the podcast, find the section, and it's like, I'm beyond that.
Yeah, right. for 1 minute.
Right.
Right. And I'm done.
So I probably won't even like it anyway.
Exactly.
Right.
So then I'm like, hey, Pick Cherries. I'm picking a 60-second clip called a Pick Cherry, and I can send it to you. And if you like it, you can send it to Juliette, and she can send it to all her friends. And I had an idea, a crazy idea, and I would call my friends, some people that I know in business. Some people are like, that's a great idea. And then some people are like, that's stupid.
Right.
And so, some people said, the technology is not there. And I'm like, okay, next. Go to the next one. Okay.
Right.
So I got together a bunch of podcasters, a bunch of technologists, and then a bunch of lawyers.
Always. Yeah, you have to have lawyers.
Yeah.
Right.
IP lawyers.
Wow.
Yeah, and can I interject? Because it was really cool how we met.
Yep.
You, I think, reached out to me on LinkedIn. And Fran, we've talked about this before. You get so many messages like, hey, I want to pitch you this. I want to pitch you that. And for some reason, I said, yeah, I'll give you 10 minutes. And then you told me the what it was all about. And I was like, wait, I need to know more about this. So that's how I got involved with Pick Cherries. And I have to say, it really has helped share my podcast, because as Stuart said, like, I would send people a podcast and say, oh, you got to listen, and no one ever does. And now you can take that little picked cherry, that snippet, and I can share it with my friends and family that really don't care about my podcast. They're like, great, you're a podcast host, and now they're listening to it, and now they're listening to the whole episode, which is like what what the whole end game is, which is really amazing.
First of all, thank you very much. You were a early adopter. And not only an adopter, but you are a connector, and you're like, Well,
when I believe in something, I really, I go all in, and I feel like you're very much the same
absolutely.
way.
And you introduced me to Fran, and it's great. Share podcasts like never before. That's it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And that's what we're doing.
Yeah. It's just like super simple, straightforward. I mean, you're solving one of the biggest challenges that podcasters have. I mean, we put so much content out there. I mean, specifically, Juliet does, we do. And I find it all the time to be the most challenging part of the production of any episode, right? Because if you look at the production cycle, you got to identify the guest, you got to plan it, you got to record it, you got to do it, and then you come to post-production, and which is actually like where the work begins.
Right.
Because our episodes, in a lot of cases, are an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours long, and I'll screen these episodes. And then I'll put together the show notes, which can only be like 3,200 characters, or Apple cuts it off. Right. Even though they say 4,000, it still gets cut off. Right. And then you have to figure out, well, what are the things that people are going to care about? Meanwhile, like, I'm the one who has identified the guest, done the recording, prepared for it. So I have my vision of what I think people want to get out of the episode. But then when listeners listen, how do they identify and pick out other things that I may not have thought about they might like, and then be able to share it?
You're in the forest.
Oh, that forest is thick and deep.
Right.
It's like in selection, in special force selection, when you have to like go through the forest backwards because it's so thick, and your rucksack.
Oh, really?
You use your rucksack and you go backwards to break all the brush, so you don't take it in the face.
Right.
That's what I feel like every day.
Yeah, absolutely. So your listeners, we're going to give you such analytics that you think that this is what they're listening to, or this is the big point, but maybe the listeners are taking this. So we took a isolated event, listening to podcasts, and made it a shared experience. And people, the consumers, the listeners, they love sharing. And as we saw during the pandemic, everybody is social beings. So people like to share. I get up in the morning. Right. I get up in the morning, and I'm ashamed to say, but the first thing I do, I go to TikTok. And I'm like,
let it out there. Let it all out.
You heard it here first, everyone. You heard it here first. This is what Stu does in the morning.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. I'll send it to Juliet. I am, my sister, my brother-in-law, unsubscribe because, enough. Like, only, send me one, a day. But, people like sharing. And so it's great for the podcasters. The podcaster is taking the notes, taking the analytics, and the listeners are sharing it and expanding your reach.
Mm-hmm. And you brought a good point up, and what I love is, we think that, all the work that we do, when we put into it, this is what our listeners are going to want to listen to. But just like on social media, when you put a post up, we talked about this yesterday, you put a post up and you're like, yes, that was such a great message. It was a great picture. It's going to be like, it's going to be shared 1,000 times. And it like literally is like zero, like dead.
35.
Right? And then you
so defeating.
So defeating, right. And then you throw something up. It's like, I just got to put something up. And everyone loves it. And you're like, oh my gosh. What? So this is very similar to that, that's what I love about it, is it's really putting the listener where they can really socially interact with your podcast and send out the pieces that mean something, the quotes that mean something, and say, hey, this is what I think you're going to love. So it's going to get a deeper connection to even your listeners with your audience.